Hey everyone, welcome to the Product Management Fireside Chat brought to you by the PM School. This chat series is for all early career PMs and product enthusiasts who are looking to grow in their mindset, get better with their roles, and steer forward towards successful product building. I'm your host, Aishwarya Ashok, and with me today is Malthi, the CPO of Jobs for Her. She has more than 2 decades of experience in building and scaling enterprise, SMB, and global platform products. She's worked earlier with SAP, PayPal, and she's run her own firm as well, and she's coached and mentored so many product managers in this space. Hi, Malthi. So glad to have you here with us.
Hey, hi, Aishwarya, and thank you for hosting me. Really glad to be part of this series. Thank you for having
Yes,
me.
absolutely. And I'm like super excited to chat with you. Like, really looked up to you in this space, and it's finally happening that we are chatting, and a lot of listeners are going to just listen to your experiences.
Sure, definitely looking forward to it, and thanks for a very warm and kind introduction.
Yeah. So let's begin with this question, Madhi, that you've worked across so many domains and you've built 0 to 1 products, you've scaled products. So how important is domain expertise when it comes to a PM role? And this is something often people talk after being in the role for a couple of years. But let's say you're extremely new to a certain domain. What ways do you keep up with that? And what's your outlook on domain expertise and PM as a role?
Okay. See, before I get into the domain part, I just want to say one thing. The context is a very important thing in any PM role, right? And that is where probably when I started my own journey as a product manager 15 years back, actually now, right? I literally started with no clue in terms of course, I was a technologist before I started. I was a coder, I was a developer. So I got into a technical product, right? So the maturity of the product that you're dealing with, the segment for which you're solving it, what exactly is the problem? Is it a B2B problem? Is it a B2C problem? Are you solving it with web? Are you solving it with mobile? Are you solving it with IoT devices? So a lot of these things actually plays a role in terms of how does your day-to-day responsibilities would look like, right? So definitely in the last few years, you will see a lot of different kind of, now we have growth PMs, you'll see e-commerce PMs, you'll see B2B PMs, you'll see e-commerce PMs,
Platform PMs, so
IoT
many.
PMs. Now then there's a new things you are calling data PM. So, it is kind of evolving. Now, at the core of it, I would say there are certain foundational crafts and skills, which a PM needs to have, right? Which is kind of, I would say, think of them like being a generalist or running across, right? But then there are also specialist PMs. For example, if you are going to be handling tons and tons of data and make insights out of it, dashboards out of it, or if you have to provide context to some of the front-end products which have to make decisions or their onboarding journey according to that, then you cannot say that I don't understand data, right? Then data there becomes a domain. Now imagine, just taking a leaf from my previous experience, imagine you're working in KYC, imagine you're working in payments, or imagine you're working in healthcare. Now, these are industries which are, you need to have a lot of information or you need to have a lot of domain knowledge, right? You cannot just walk in and say that, okay, how does the handshake between a credit card and a bank happens? There are a lot of nuances underlying those layers that you need to understand, right? So if I have to really say, the way I would say is that domain expertise, and here I would start with functional domain, right? So the functional domain, definitely yes, depending upon certain industries, I would say rather some of the regulated industries or something very specific problems that you are kind of solving. Over there, having that functional domain expertise is definitely very critical. For example, very recently, I was running a program for a bunch of automobile data PMs, right? So they all are SMEs in the automobile space. And now they're looking to say that how do they automate some of their products? How do they build more digital products? Now, in that kind of a space, when you're building products for your manufacturing lines, let's say examples, if you do not have the domain knowledge, you will not be a successful PM. Right? So they are trying to acquire these PM crafts, but the domain knowledge is already there. So that would be the functional domain aspect of it. Then imagine if you're somebody who's working on certain digital products, which are working with automobiles, going back to working with sensors, working with some of the IoT devices. Now you need to understand that higher hardware space, right? So that becomes your technology domain part of it. Then we talked about data PM. So there are always these intersections of being a generalist, being a specialist that you will evolve. So as an early stage PM, I would say don't kind of get into a rabbit hole into a certain kind of a functional domain or tech domain. I would rather say focus on building your skills, which are going to be more foundational as part of your hard skills, soft skills, tools that will, technology that will help you to grasp things much more faster, right? And then as you kind of build on your experience, let's say you continue to suppose work on more and more e-commerce applications, right? Then you kind of develop an expertise, and you will always find companies which are looking for either doing 0 to 1 products or scaling up their products, where they want people who have worked in those kind of products for 4 to 5 years and to be able to quickly start in and be productive for like yesterday or on day one, right? So I would say when you start as a generalist, but as you kind of evolve, the opportunities that come in your way, and based on your own interest, decide whether it is a functional, whether it is a technology domain that you would like to specialize in.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think this makes sense, because most often folks who are just entering into the role or who are very early in their roles often have the question about, okay, should I choose B2B? Should I choose B2C? And this is because they see, let's say, their peers, or they see folks on social media post about, hey, I just joined this company, or, this company is doing pretty cool stuff. But from what you just explained, it makes a lot of rationale around first think whether you're solving for the right problem space, like just be in a certain problem space. And once you have the experience of gauging and understanding, okay, so I think this is the problem that we're solving. And if I'm able to spot on multiple such problems, and then I realize, okay, my interest leans more towards a certain problem space, then I think it makes more sense to choose a domain.
Correct. Exactly.
Right.
I get a lot of these early stage PMs who says, oh, Malthi, I just want to work on B2C. I know it is very exciting. And as you said, there is a lot of peer pressure and just to see, the kind of impact that can I have, because millions of customers are using my product. But guys, believe me, the complexity is much more in the B2B space, and you will find tons of those challenging problems over there. So don't have these blind spots where don't be very choosy, especially when you're early stage of your careers. Be more open, and I think, as you said, Aishwarya, the focus should be on that. How do I identify the right problem to solve?
Right.
And break down this problem into a smaller chunks, apply first principles. That should be the focus area. And then you kind of, figure out your own path.
Right. And that, like you mentioned, is one first, couple of ways to build a competence part. Because once you have the competence, then I think it'll help you steer forward towards choosing the specific lanes that you might want to work towards in the future. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, Malthi, now that we're talking about the kind of mistakes, or in general, how do you look at problems? How do you identify problems? You must have advised a lot of startups in your career. So what kind of mistakes or pitfalls do you think PMs often fall into, especially when they're early in their careers, in terms of trying to understand the problems that they're solving, when trying to scope and say, okay, this is a problem we're going after, so this is going to be my narrative?
Yeah, I think the most common problem, and I keep telling my team to kind of hold on themselves, is that one is that not asking the why, right? Because a lot of times what happens when they get into these customer interviews, or when they kind of go more deeper to understand what is the problem, sometimes they get lost in terms of the amount of insights that they derive, and they not look at the bigger picture. So not constantly asking why, and sometimes it is just because their leaders have given them a feature to do. They just say, okay, I have to just do this, right? So there are a lot of challenges around that. So first of all, constantly asking the why. Why am I doing it? What is the problem that I'm solving, right? I think that is a very important aspect. The second aspect, which I see a lot of early stage PMs doing, is that jumping to the solution too quickly, right? See, if you want to be able to solve a problem in the best possible way, right? Of course, there is no one way of solving a problem, but there is always a optimum way, if I have to put a word to it, right? But the minute I'm telling you a problem, and in your own mind, you're rather than listening to me keenly, you're already thinking, oh, this can be solved like with this can be solved with this kind of a thing. Then you have already lost your customer there, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of my and that is why it kind of ties back to the statement which I said, not doing asking enough whys,
Why?
right? And jumping to the solution too quickly. Right? These are two very important things. And the third thing, where I also see some of these early stage founders or early stage startups struggling with, is that, see, when you have identified a problem, when you are decided that this is how I'm going to build it, it is also important to step back and ask that, how am I going to measure the success or failure?
Right.
Right? What does success mean? See, in one of my earlier companies, there was a beautiful protocol that we used to follow. That the minute you identify a problem, you should be in a state where you say that if I solve this problem, this is the customer benefit that I will, derive out of it. The customer will derive out of it. If you are able to articulate a good customer benefit, that means you are able to nail down on the problem.
Right.
So one of the things which I also see a lot of them struggle when I say that, okay, you tell me once you solve this problem, how are you going to measure the success? And the answer is very, very vague. The more I keep saying how, why, that is when they kind of, nudge a little bit more towards how the success looks like. So these are three things which I have seen that early stage PMs or early stage founders do not think through well. So it is really important. And these are all part of your, very first principle thinking. That why should I do it? How should I solve it? And what does success mean for this? Right? So no matter what problem you're solving, keep going back to these fundamental questions.
Yeah, no, this is spot on, because all the 3 points are very specific to first principle thinking. And for me, when you were explaining this, I was thinking about how for a lot of us who, let's say, have gotten through a very traditional background of schooling and of solving these problems in colleges and then like entering into a product role, we were always taught that problem solving was to arrive at solutions. Like we were always like, thought about, oh, you have this problem at hand right now. What is the immediate solution you can think about? So, which is just the reverse case when we are, let's say, on the role where we have to think more about, oh, now the problem solving is a lot to do with the problem itself, like trying to understand if this is even the right problem to be solved, and only then jump into the solution. So, like you said, most of us would have definitely fallen into that pitfall of having to like scope out the solution, multiple solutions for a problem in the first place. And I love the third point as well, which is about measuring what would this impact look like, or what would success look like. Because again, with measuring, I think we have the strap of looking only at metrics, but when it comes to like early stage teams, data is definitely there, but data is not the only point to like measure a success of, let's say, some testing that's just rolled out. It could be customer goodwill. It could be like early users coming and telling you about how useful this is for them. So like there are other channels for you to tap into. So I think those 3 points are very, very specific in terms of like going back to and keeping like a retro check.
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very well summarized.
Yeah. So, Malthi. So, on very, very similar lines, I in fact saw one of your recent posts on LinkedIn where you have this rationale for product managers and trying to tell them how they should be choosing the next PM role, especially from the lens of reporting, because this is often not what traditionally PMs are, close to thinking about. I mean, they think about the team, they think about their peers, but when it comes to like the reporting manager, it's often always taken as, yeah, I just have a product lead. But I saw your take on how reporting to an engineering leader versus a product leader can have very different lenses to think from. So could you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, sure. See, in my experience, Aishwarya, I mean, there is, in fact, in my own experience of being in 5, 6 different product companies or non-product companies, no product orgs are same, right? Because based on the size, the maturity model of the company itself, right? They would usually experiment to say whether we should have the product managers reporting into a VP of engineering, or should I path my product managers along with the business analyst under an engineering leader, or whether it is really worth it for us to have a CPO at the board level and stuff like that. So it's just kind of contextual to that. But if I have to say that, I as a product manager, see, a lot of times, especially early stage PMs, and now we have tons of these startups, where probably in your initial days as a PM, you are probably the only PM in that startup, right? Then there are not too many people who are along with you who can probably guide you and say, hey, this is what the role of a product manager is, because you're constantly wearing multiple hats. So my advice would be, when now that I'm kind of trying to generalize this a little bit, but when you're looking at your next PM role, I think it is very important to do a little bit of reflection to say that, hey, what all did I learn in the job that I currently have today? Where do I want to grow, in the next 2 to 3 years, assuming you're still in the product path, right? What are the skills? Because as a product managers, we are supposed to be future tellers, right? Now, as a future teller, for what kind of a company do I want to be a future teller? What are my strengths? What are the kind of things that I need to imbibe from my ecosystems, right? For example, one of a very common thing which I hear from product managers is that, hey, I want to be part of a very thriving product team from whom I can learn, right? So, because as product managers, we lean a lot on kind of absorbing from our ecosystem. Right? Now, believe me, if you so that would mean if you're getting into, let's say, a B2C space, or you want to kind of learn how to interact with customers, you probably want to look for a company wherein these kind of interventions, or these kind of processes are in place, which helps you to have a continuous discovery, continuous conversations with your customers, right? And probably you need to prepare that you probably are going to be want to work with a product team which is more invested in kind of doing customer interviews, learning, building for customers, validating, and that. But believe me, a lot of PMs these days, PMs comes from very diverse backgrounds, right? So there are, and today technology is like at the helm of everything and anything that we do, right? I'd already talked about IoT, data, platforms. We are big on platform products, right? Yeah. In a lot of those contexts, it actually also helps to be working very closely with the tech team to just understand that how are they kind of solving the problems, right? See, there are a good number of engineering leaders actually who, of course, have the technology expertise up their sleeves, but they also understand the business, right? Right. So it does. I have primarily done that because, but sometimes it does happen when you are very, very rooted in some technology product platforms. You may not have those windows to directly talk to the customers, but it is more the front end teams or your account executives becomes your proxy. These things to go reach out to the customer. So I would say this is depending upon what are the skill sets that you have today, what are the type of skill set that you're looking to acquire. How do you want to shape up your product career? Whether you want to go more technology, whether you want to go more data side, whether you want to go more consumer facing or more functional. Based on that, one should kind of prepare and decide that what is the kind of product role that I would like to land myself in. The only thing I would like to kind of conclude this answer, I mean, there's no right or wrong here, is don't hesitate to experiment. Right. But try to at least have a plan to whomever, if like this actually article was triggered by one of my mentees who reached out to me, and this guy was very, very reluctant. He said, the first meeting that I'm going to have with this new manager, I'm going to ask him, hey, I'm going to cut off from other product managers. How are you going to enable me to do that? I'm going to be working very closely with the technology team. I don't even know if they are very empathetic about customers. XYZ. I said, hold on. Instead of, just pumping him with all the bullets that you have, ask him that, hey, what is that basic transformational change that you are trying to bring in by parking me under an engineering manager? Ask your engineering manager that how can we work together to bring this change? Right? So make it a very collaborative effort. So that's what I would say. Don't go with the mindset that this is what I have to learn, but also look at how you can give it back to the engineering team to make them more empathetic and bring in more product mindset. Right, right.
very, very clear explanation of this, because it sounds like a lot of times that, we spend time with building products. So this is more like building time with ourselves to understand what really ticks us, what drives us in the role. And especially with the experimentation part, I think it comes up only when we also try and ask these questions to people that we are talking to. And I've seen folks in the past who prioritize, like each person would have a certain thing that ticks them. Like one of my friends always keep saying that I always prioritize the peers, the quality of the peers that I work with, because the minute I know I'm surrounded by folks that I can learn from, I know that my skills are just going to get transcendental. And that makes absolute sense, right? So each person would have like a certain norm that ticks them. And I think in this case, like you mentioned, spend time with yourself, understand what of this new role, whether it's under an engineering manager, it's under a product leader, is going to take you, and then you start to have a collaborative chat with them, and just basically like work it out on a very case by case basis. So
Absolutely, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Cool. Malti, we've like done with most of our serious talk, and we're just going to go into this section called rapid fire, where I have 3 questions for you, all 5 questions. So you just have to give me answers immediately without thinking.
All right, bring it on.
Cool. So here goes your first one. In your one-on-ones, what's the most repeated questions that a PM has asked you so far?
How do I say no to my stakeholders?
$1 million question, always, like hands down. It wins any race, I guess.
I know.
Cool. So what's your favorite PM buzzword, which is something that you often catch yourself saying or repeating?
Customer centricity.
Nice. I'm so glad it's not, it depends, like most people call it out to be. But yeah, customer centricity. Yeah, I think more than a buzzword, it's also like a very, very important keyword for somebody to like, know and lean towards. So here's yours.
But I realize whether I'm teaching discovery or design or execution or GTM, I use
you often go back
very, very frequently in my class.
Yeah, that's good. It's definitely for the ones who are listening at home. Just listening to this for the first time, I think it's a good discovery for them. So
yeah.
Cool. The last one. Would you rather attend a quick call for meetings, or would you type out detailed answers in a chat for a question?
Oh no! I'm a very call person.
Okay, that's good.
Yes.
So
just pick up the phone and just done with it. I love writing, but I would rather prefer to talk over a chat over writing.
Totally. Thank you so much, Malti. Today's chat has been super fun, because like it was so good to discuss some of these perspectives with you, and especially you bring in these experiences from different companies, different teams and roles. So it's great that the listeners are able to tie in all of your stories together and use it for their own product management stints. So thank you so much for sharing these stories with us today.
Thank you. I'm so glad. And thank you for kind of, really summarizing and packing them up with some very key takeaways for each of these answers, Aishwarya. I really enjoyed having this conversation.
Likewise. Thanks, Malti.